All right, everybody, we are live. Welcome to another Wine and Comics pairing show. Let me flip over to Instagram and click that go live button over there. We are live on Instagram. We are live everywhere anyone cares to watch us. As you are joining us, let's play our opening, and then we're going to introduce our very special guest today. Here we go.
I was digging it.
All right. Wine and Comics, here we come. We've got our wine, or at least me and Dallas have our wine. I'm not sure what Wells is drinking, but let me introduce you to our very special guest today, Wells Thompson. Hey, see, even fancier than we are. Nice. He's got to upstage us somehow. But Wells Thompson, the writer of the comic, the not safe for work comedy, SMUT. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. All right, written by Wells. I know, exactly. Yes, written by Wells. And you have a co-writer on this one, don't you?
Yeah. My wife Brianna helped me write this. It was really invaluable for a lot of it, and even if her name wasn't on the book, half the jokes are just things that she's said around the house. So I would have felt guilty not including her.
Nice. Absolutely. You got to pull, I think it gives any piece of art, any piece of writing, like that little something like when you pull from your life like that, because it's things when you're just sitting there in a chair trying to come up with great lines of dialogue that it's like nothing is as good as spontaneity in real life, in the wild. Yeah. 100%. So let's actually talk a little bit about you as a creator, because it's the first time that you have been on the Wine and Comics pairing show. This is the first time we have read or seen any of your work. However, this is not your first piece of work. So give us a little bit of a rundown about you, what got you into writing in the first place, why comics, and your journey leading up to SMUT #1, which is the comic that we are here to talk about today. So please give us the deets.
All right, so the year is 1993 in Arkansas.
Arkansas. That's right. You're still in Arkansas, aren't you?
I currently live in Chicago, but I'm from Arkansas.
Oh, perfect. Good on you.
Yeah,
congrats.
I have wanted. Congrats. Correct. Yes. No, I've wanted to write for like a living since I want to say like 6th or 7th grade. I read The Secret Garden and I fully hated it and decided that I can do
better than this.
Yeah, no. So my writing career was fueled, and at least initially, entirely by spite.
As it should be.
Yeah. Look, some things, I think love drives you to do something, but spite is as good a motivator as any to get you started.
There is an Alan Moore quote out there that he's on record. It's something he said not too long ago. It's relatively recently. And he's like, read everything, read as much as you can. And he's like, not just the stuff you like. He's like, nothing motivates you more than reading something and thinking, I can do better than this. And like, that is what's going to get you to be a writer and to write your best work. And I was like, dude, Alan Moore thinks that is what makes you the best writer. Like,
my favorite version of that quote that's been around for a little while is Todd McFarlane, and it's mostly because Todd McFarlane has a funny voice. The way he says it, he's like, so when I was getting started, I was thinking, Toddy, you can't compete with this. You got Kirby out here, you got you can't compete. They're too great. But then you just pull something off the rack and you look at that. You look at these jokers. I can do better than that. And that's what gets you started. Don't compare yourself to the great. You compare yourself to the
Kirby. Right.
Yeah. No. I absolutely agree with that sentiment. There's nothing that really motivates you to do better than seeing something and just being like, I can't stand this. I want to do better. But yeah, I originally started writing when I was young. I kind of bullishly decided it was going to be a career, no matter how many people correctly told me it was a bad idea. Studied really for it in college. Got into a bit of screenwriting. Got into a bit of novel writing. Didn't fall into comics until well after that, actually, about 5, maybe 6 years ago. No, maybe a little longer. But my frequent writing partner, Dalton Shannon, is someone I went to college with. After we graduated, we were kind of in a creative slump, started talking. He pulled me into comics. I started it as sort of a writing exercise and then absolutely fell in love with the medium, started reading everything I could. And yeah, it's been no looking back ever since. Since then, I've published a horror anthology, Descent into Dread, through Caliber Comics. Mechaton, a all-ages sci-fi action comedy. Frankenstein the Unconquered, an action horror series. And currently working, we're currently producing The Cat Skin and the Rose, which is fantasy and romance. Because I don't, apparently I don't believe in consistency in any sort of like sticking with any one genre. Just anything that interests me, I grab onto and I start writing.
Good.
Yeah, as that is as it should be too, honestly. I mean, I get branding and things like that can be important. And look, if you work for, I don't know, I feel like even musicians though are starting to finally break through. That was sort of the industry where that was the hardest thing. Fans would just like disown you if you tried a different genre out of the blue. But now, even then, now it's like, okay, we're all on Spotify. You're getting most of our music for free anyways, you fuckers. So why don't we just do whatever we want as artists, and you'll come see our shows or not, or whoever likes this current album will come see the latest show. And we all seem to be finally breaking free from those bounds. But I've always appreciated people who did the most, would actually not stick to one thing or had this evolution to their style, evolution to different genres, different voices. I mean, like, I feel like that is the true mark of greatness when you can write or create more than one thing, right? And so I've always appreciated that from artists.
I also think, to your point, Wells, the idea of in those early days, you're just trying it all. Because you do have the ego that says, yeah, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to throw everything in the wall and see what sticks. I'm going to test my metal here. So, it definitely leads to a better product in the long run once you figure out that skill set and figure out those weaknesses and strengths. So, hell yeah, continue doing it. It's great.
Yeah, for sure. And I love dabbling in different genres. And don't get me wrong, I don't just publish everything that pops into my head. I would say most of it.
Some of those guys, though.
Most of it is an experiment that goes nowhere, and I go, "Well, I tried that. I'm not going to do that again."
Yeah.
But a lot of times, an anthology prompt will come up, and I'll think, "I've never worked in that genre before. What would I do with that?"
Yeah.
And I wind up spinning it and getting really interested in it and developing it into its own kind of beast. Such was the case with The Cat Skin and the Rose, a little bit. So what happened with SMUT as well was just looking at the state of Kickstarter, which if you've looked at crowdfunding, it's very not safe for work heavy. It's very geared towards sort of adult and what used to be called underground comics. And a lot of it is really good. And some of it,
a lot of it is not.
Some of it I find a little, I apologize for the ambulance passing. Some of it I find a little bit voyeuristic, a little bit objectifying. And I wanted to challenge myself to see if I had anything to say about the subject and to see if I could do it in a way that would excite me as a reader.
So you didn't just make smut, is what you're saying.
I mean, like I said, I like an on-the-nose title, but I also like stories that have a lot of depth and that care about their characters and that want to talk about what they're doing as a subject matter. Frankenstein the Unconquered, for example, is a story about violence, but not just a story where violence happens. It's about it's about exploring what that does to the world and to yourself. And same thing with SMUT. It's a book where sex happens, but it's also a book about sex, and how, how we reflect on it and how it sort of changes us. And yeah, I started writing this as a challenge. I didn't expect it to go anywhere. And then I fell in love with the characters, and I realized as I got to, page 70 some odd, I realized that maybe I have something to say about this.
Maybe I should finish this. Now that I've gone this deep. Yeah. 100%. So, and, I will say that is something I think, like you, we just covered our very first technically official Not Safe for Work comic last week on this show. And so you're our number 2, technically, quote unquote, Not Safe for Work, like proudly bearing
you are the
on
smuttiest
the title of Kickstarter. Yeah.
I'll say I don't, as much as like I bear the term, I think that Not Safe for Work is kind of a clumsy label.
Agreed.
It's what's expected. It's what you put on thing. I would say that this book is a comedic erotica. Like, that's how I would classify it if I could. But it's all on sort of a spectrum between, like, light nudity to somewhere on the spectrum between light nudity to porn is where it flies.
Well, and I think Not
That's
Safe
another
for
great
Work
full quote there.
I think Not Safe for Work often denotes something where it's like the nudity, the cheesecake style nudity is more of the point in the draw, right? So it's like you've got that sort of, back in the day, you would have like this one's also hyper violent, but you would have like the Faust comics of the 90s no-os and things like that, where it's like hyper violent, but also lots of titties and things like that. And just like, nudity at the drop of a hat, for the same way they would show boobs in 80s action movies, where it was like, God, guys, you could not go one action movie without just making up a scene to have it happen. And they were always pointless.
Yeah, I've never appreciated fan service in like the over the top sense, where it really feels like there was no purpose to showing this other than some kind of ADHD compulsion to be like, no, we're gonna lose the audience. And I tend to have a little bit more faith in my readership that they can go a couple of pages at a time without seeing
a little beyond the tasteful nudity that is happening on covers or on the page or what have you. It's interesting though, because most recently we just did our first attempted Kickstarter. It fell slightly shy. We made it to about 85% funded, so we are coming back a second time for it. But it's a proper Not Safe for Work underground comic from the 80s that we're bringing back into print. And it was funny because I used the NSFW label because I'm like, the art style, like a lot of those underground comics from the 80s, the art style can kind of fool you into thinking it might be a little all ages, but it's totally not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That was definitely the point of those comics, was to mix the Sunday comic strip style with incredibly inappropriate. That's sort of what Fritz the Cat did. That's what
exactly. And it's funny. I discovered, I was listening to a podcast just last week that was talking about Kitchen Sink Press from that era, which was one of the great underground publishers at that time. And they were saying how Kitchen Sink Press, like, they did a lot of underground comics that went on to, once Kitchen Sink went under, Fantagraphics now basically publishes all of them. And so really high-end prestige type underground comics, but that didn't pay the bills. What paid the bills was their erotica line of comics, which a lot of the people that were doing the more prestige underground comics would do the art in the erotica under pseudonyms because they didn't want to be associated with it. But they would get a nice payday from it. And then Kitchen Sink would actually float the bill for all the prestige projects. There's so much of that going on at Kickstarter right now. Unfortunately, they're all disparate projects. They're not floating each other really. But it's like the Not Safe, when you look at the difference between the Not Safe for Work versus your Safe for Work, for lack of a better term, even though a lot of them might be violent or something, and not for kids either per se. But not specifically Not Safe for Work for what that term denotes. The Not Safe for Work, of course, the interest there, like you said, is so much greater. You can see how much more the Not Safe for Work seems to raise compared to how all the other comics are like, they're doing okay, but a lot of them are funding by the skin of their teeth.
Right.
And I think we fell into an issue where we were using the NSFW banner. I think I'm not going to use that banner this time around, or I have to present the comic slightly differently because of what it denotes. And it comes with an expectation that I'm like, well, this is old school style of NSFW, which is not really the same. Like, you're not getting the cheesecake style. You're getting nudity that is much more tethered to the story, and it's wilder and crazier, and not, more like, how best to put it? It's like underground comics from the 80s were much more like, Robert Crumb, like a lot of like id and on display on the page, rather than this sort of like pinup style type thing, which is not really what they did.
Right. And pinup is great in certain circumstances, but I do think that when you rely a little bit too much on the pinup style, it gets a little objectifying. It gets some
of course.
And I would just, if it were me, I would say an underground comic. Like, maybe that's just me, knowing a lot about the history of comics and assuming that other people will understand what that means as well. But
that's actually a good point. Just leaving it at underground comics does the heavy lifting without having to, particularly with the connotations of the denotations of the early days of outsider comics. So that's a good point.
Again, I think for me, I just didn't want any parents being like, "Oh, my kid might like this. Look at that cute little protagonist with the tail." And I'm like, no. I'm like, please don't let me mail this to you.
That was the leading reason why I named it the way I did, is because I have, when I'm at a convention, I have Frankenstein the Unconquered, and there are some parents that are cool, that are, super like horror fans that are like, no, I'm going to share this with my kid. This is like the Conan stuff I read when I was a kid. And it's like, maybe it's a little mature for that age, but that's the kind of thing where like a parental, and you could overlook that. I also have Mechaton, which is like definitely all ages, not necessarily for kids, but like anyone could enjoy it. And I really didn't want to mislead anyone in my audience with what I was about to do, or with what I was about to make. And so I was just like, let's put it on the title, make sure that everyone knows what they're getting themselves into.
Right.
Yes.
Great idea.
I think going back to that branding thing, like SMUT's a brilliant word, because even without the Not Safe for Work, you called the comic SMUT. So everyone that'll give anyone that momentary pause to be like, now, wait a minute, let me look at this comic. Let me look at the details before I decide what this is. But, even going back to Conan and things like that, like there was a lot of Conan, they did those black and white oversized magazines back in my childhood days, which were they didn't have to stick to the comics code. So it could be a little more violent, a little sexier than normal. But of course they were just on, like, for me, the comic shops didn't always have them, but like gas stations had them. So I would always like buy one when we were on road trips, and I'd be like, there were Archie digests and there were those Conan magazines, and you could and they weren't restricted by age or anything like that, even though there was always stuff in there. I feel like the 80s and early 90s was that era where we were
just like the PG-13 label.
Yes, and there was so much that was like, it's okay for, like, unless it was a hard R. My parents never bothered to look,
Same.
And even then they would sometimes look and be like, yeah, this is okay, and let me do it anyway. I mean, like,
I remember
that
worse.
Yeah, exactly. Like I went to go see, I talked my mom into letting me do Total Recall for my birthday when I was, I'm trying to remember what, but I was underage. I was not 18 yet, but it was like Total Recall. She watched the trailer and she was like, okay. And she sat in with us and watched it with us, my friends. And afterwards she was like, yeah, that was fine. Like it didn't bother her or anything like that.
I grew up thoroughly in the late 90s, early 2000s, everyone is out to steal your kids panic, where suddenly big problem.
I was just before. Yeah. So we got away with a lot, where later everything started clamping down, and it was like, the world is no longer safe. All like video games need to be checked, movies need to be checked, what your kids are reading needs to be checked. And my parents were like, you're reading? Fucking awesome. Like, keep reading. No matter what it is, we're good with it. And as long as it's, And it was like,
that's honestly what I'm about nowadays, is just like, if you're anyone, kids, adults, anything, if you're reading, I'm happy. Because it's such a big ask for most people. Especially if you, like, the big breakthrough in my life was I moved to a city where I don't have to drive a car. So I get to sit on a train and read. And the amount of books that I read per year skyrocketed from like 4 or 5 maybe to like I think I read 40 last year, 45. So most people have a difficult time finding the energy, finding the focus, finding the time to sit down and read. So anything that gets you to do that motivates you to do that, I'm all for.
Yes. And, especially if it's prose or something like that, or anything where it's text, like a heavy enough text base, because that takes it's just a different part of your brain that you're exercising at that point. And it's like, look, if it's a lot of taboo, forbidden subject matter on that page, you're still working to get that into your head, and I'm like, that's not the worst thing in the world, I think. And you have to think about it more because it's really spelled out in certain ways. Like, it's really being presented to you in a way that isn't as easy as a simple picture, where it's like, we're just showing it to you and you don't have to think as hard on it. I mean, that said, don't get me wrong, movies and comics being their own medium and format, the first time human beings saw a motion picture, they couldn't figure out what the fuck they were looking at. It's that old story of they ran screaming from the theater. Like, there is a learning curve. Like, we learn things trying to consume any kind of media. But I do think that we can hit autopilot quicker with visual mediums, where we're like, okay, we get this, and now we're just leaning back and letting it wash over us. We're not working hard on it anymore. And we always know when that challenging version of a movie or challenging version of a comic that's doing something funky, and there's that kind of rejection of it for a moment, where we're just sort of like, this book is trying too hard. Like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know, this movie, like, it's pretentious. I don't like it because it's making me have to engage. And there's always that moment where we're like, we don't want to have to learn the new thing. We were really happy on autopilot. But then years later, it's funny, me and Dallas have a podcast tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the Wachowski Speed Racer from 2008, which is a movie that was like resoundingly rejected when it first came out, and has since found so much of a cult following and like appreciation. And it's definitely going to be an appreciation podcast where we're like, this movie was way ahead of its time, doing a lot of things that were like, we were like, this is too much. It's sensory overload. We think it's just a bunch of garbage. And then later we were able to see it for being much more meticulously crafted than we ever gave it credit for. So things like that. Yeah. I think that's a big piece. Yeah.
Wells, real quick, how many projects have you launched on Kickstarter so far?
So I believe this is my 11th Kickstarter, plus one on Zoop that I've done. So I've done 12 crowdfunding projects so far. Of those, well, SMUT is funded, so 10 have been successful.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so pretty good track record so far. And the one that did not succeed twice, unfortunately, was a really ambitious project that we took a risk on. I still want to see it done one day, but we knew that was good. That had a good possibility of not going the way that we wanted.
Was it a really high goal on top of it being something that was hard to drive an audience to?
It was.
It
was a 112 page graphic novel. Trying to get the whole thing done at once. It was a lot to ask for sure.
But you had to do it.
It did well. We have great, very loyal readers that want to see us succeed, and I'm really excited about that. And I'm trying to sort of rein it in terms of the spread of what we do, just so that people still feel like they're being catered to.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, like I said, my instinct is to do something wildly different than whatever I just did.
Yeah.
So
right.
But I have, I think this still fell in line with what I do. Ultimately, what I feel like I'm about is not any one genre, but just strongly like character-driven stories that are smart and focused and don't necessarily like fully challenge the audience in the way that like a Darren Aronofsky film does or anything like that, but don't feel like I'm wasting your time. Like, that's the big thing to me, is I want to respect my readership by not insulting their intelligence and also giving them something to chew on.
Yeah. So in terms of this one, SMUT, in particular, what were the challenges for you? Because this is the first time you kind of had jumped headlong into this genre. Were there any particular challenges for you?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest one was just kind of the mental hurdle of sort of like, what happens when I put this out here? Do people, does it change people's perception of me? Since I haven't done this kind of book before. But given, as you said, that we're kind of in an era where there's a lot more acceptance of like artists and authors going in and musicians and whatnot, going into different territory, going into experimental territory, that I wasn't as worried about that as, one of the beauties about Kickstarter is, and self-publishing and direct to consumer kind of financing, is that you don't feel as bound by like, branding and genre trapping and the idea that like, oh no, you're a science fiction author, that's what you do. Which is great. I love that. So I was a little bit worried about that. And then the other thing was just I try to be very open and in a sense vulnerable in my storytelling. I try and, put as much of myself on the page as I can. But when you're talking very openly about sex, it is extremely vulnerable in a very new kind of way. And there's definitely the fear of like, oh, are people going to judge me? What if what I thought was a good idea is actually, something that people are going to go, oh, maybe you shouldn't have done this. But, given both that I have incredibly strong support system of like people that I trust that were able to read it and say, yeah, we think this is really good. And just the trust that I have in myself, having done this for a number of years, I was able to move past that pretty quickly. As I said, this was sort of originally a challenge for myself and something that I wanted to do for me. I was perfectly content to let this sit in a drawer. And it wound up growing into something that I really loved and had to share. So yeah, I didn't, the typical challenges that you would expect, I don't think were necessarily there for me, partially because I just allowed myself the freedom to go at it at whatever pace, whatever page length, tell the story however I wanted. Don't worry about if it's ever going to sell. But also because I have experience in a bunch of different genres, and I was able to sort of combine my knowledge of those to make something that works on its own merits within this new genre, if that makes any sense. My like prose writing relies a lot on, people talking, internal monologue, the things that you expect out of prose writing. There's not like the most action, so I'm used to working in that realm. My comics are a lot more action focused, just because when you put something on a page, you realize really quickly floating heads aren't interesting to look at. So when it came time for this, where there's not any explosions or sword fights or anything like that, getting to combine those and say, how do I make the page look interesting while also relying on the skills that I already have for dialogue and stuff like that, came together a lot more naturally than you might expect. This was a fun project to write from beginning to end. I didn't really feel like there were too many obstacles to overcome.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. The preview pages that we've seen, and by the way, for everyone watching, we only saw some preview pages, so that's what we're going to be going off of. We have not read the entire issue. Certainly not the whole series is not done yet. This is issue 1 of 3. But for the preview pages that we saw, like that scene, you did that because this is something that happens in like movies too, right? Where you want to have like a Kevin Smith like scene, and you're like, okay, well, that's just a bunch of people standing around talking. What is happening? This is still a movie. It's visual. Like, what are they doing? Where does it take place? And so you set it in this diner. You had the 3 main characters interact with each other in certain ways where just, and when I say interact, like nothing super active, just small little things, how who's leaning into who is, you know, what is their, you're showing a lot of their dynamics.
Establishing scenes. It's
I really like doing dialogue in comics because I'm always looking for how do I make this panel look different from the last one? How do I make sometimes it is making it look the same for a joke. I love the repeated panel, don't get me wrong. I think that's a great tool. But yeah, as you said, it gets really boring when it's just the same shot, reverse shot of a couple characters, and it's just the only thing to look at are the dialogue balloons. So yeah, it's you know, when characters slump over, when they lean into each other, when their expressions change in a really meaningful way, and moreover, like what's going on in the background. One of my favorite things to do in that scene is there's an entire background gag of a waiter running across the street to the grocery store to grab an ingredient that they don't have for one of the characters. The entire point of which is to establish that she's the kind of person that can get what she wants without even asking for it, really.
Right. Right.
So yeah,
I did feel, by the way, when that moment, I've been that waiter, I've been that, you know, guy in the cafe or diner or whatnot, and I will say I felt for him. I was like, I would never do that. I'm like, I don't care who the person was. I don't care how she looked at me. I'd be like, lady, you heard me. But at the same time,
I'm you know, for 10 years I was a server, and I wrote that with that in mind of like, this is it's meant to highlight how like weirdly exceptional she is in this regard, because like no one else could have pulled this off. She doesn't have to say go get it. She just looks at him, and he's like, "No, I'll make it happen. It's fine. It's okay."
He's like, "Oh yeah, there's a grocery store or something, you know, convenience store nearby. I'm sure they have like a carton of oat milk we can buy one of with petty cash and bring it back and whatever."
Exactly.
And it's like, yeah. And I mean, I've done that when the manager tells me to do that. When it's, you know, we're like, we're out, we're not getting a refill for days, so go buy some from, you know, down this. Here's the cash. Go buy it. Come back. But it's like from just a customer, like being like, but I want it. And it's sort of like, yeah, I can't. One, as the server, I'm like, yeah, I don't have the authority to, I mean, I'm not buying it with my own money. I don't have the authority to use the restaurant's money. Though I'm sure he went and got approval or whatever. But at the same time, I was like, I felt like that moment was a very hit me in the right place, I think, just from, you know, having been that person and having customers try to pull that on me to the best of their ability. It's just usually, you're right, people don't have, you know, they just seem out of sorts, and you're like, what do you want me to do? I don't place the orders for whatever it is we're missing. You know, it's like, this is not my fault.
I have more scenes in the scope of my fiction. I have more scenes of the waiter just being like, what do you think I do here? What are you trying to achieve? But for this in particular, I thought that would be, you know, a fun way of both breaking up the dialogue and showing an action unfolding, while also, you know, telling the story in an interesting way, letting you know who the characters are, and keeping everything brisk and moving so that you're not just looking at the same 3 faces making an exchange. it's a visual medium, and I love to experiment in that playground of just like, how do we make this thing that should look exactly the same every time look different? How does it tell a story in parallel to what's actually just being said?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And how did you meet your co-conspirator Bianca on this one?
Completely by chance through Twitter. Like yeah, social media has been a godsend for a lot of reasons. It's also been terrible for a lot of reasons. Let's be clear.
Of course.
But
I mean, that is technology in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
No matter what it is, it's like it improves our lives and comes with all its own new problems. And
absolutely. There's so many things I despise about Twitter and about and about social media and how it's just kind of consumed our lives.
Well, it's funny. I was looking for you on to tag you, and you're only on Twitter. And I was like, wow, it's usually the inverse where everyone has abandoned Twitter, but they're having a hard time cutting ties with everything else. But Twitter is the one they were like, yeah, I'm out. And you're on Twitter and you've cut ties with everything, or maybe never been on the other things that I don't know. But
yeah, I can't dedicate myself to 9 different sites.
Thank you.
Went into Twitter and
oh, hush, Dallas, you can't do one.
That's true. No.
I just do the one. That and like I have a Substack. I have my own like newsletter, but that's kind of
just found your Substack, by the way. So yes, I feel like for us, I really want to make Substack our sort of like one-stop shop home base, and
for sure,
use the other socials for like.
Yeah,
I'll post when there's a new thing like everywhere, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'm not going to sit there and try and drum up new people to followers or anything. I'm like, if you want to follow us on those, you'll get updates and that's it. But like Substack is where the community building's all going to be kind of a thing, is my hope. But I'm with you there. Yeah. I do think everyone's got to find their hub where this is where,
that is for sure what I would like to move to. Cause that allows me to just kind of like put out what I think are the most like substantive things that I can say and do. Right. All that to say, Twitter, one of the things that's great about Twitter and social media is that as a creative person, as someone who needs collaborators, I'm not bound to the Chicago artist scene. I'm not bound to just people that I physically know in my area, which as far as artists are concerned are like 2 people and they're way too busy to help me. Right. So yeah, I found Bianca. I really didn't know what I wanted SMUT to look like, which I is normally something that I go into a project with a really strong opinion about what kind of style it needs. SMUT was very open. SMUT was very kind of up in the air, and I sort of was browsing, looking for inspiration, looking for potential styles. And she has bordering on sort of a webtoony style. I don't mean that in like a derogatory way, just like
no, I see that. I get
ever so slightly cartoony, a little bit flat colors, but very expressive. And I thought that could be interesting. I reached out to her, and she also was like, I'm not sure, I don't know exactly if this is the kind of project that I want to take for obvious reasons. I've done like, suggested full, I haven't done full, erotica, kind of not safe for work material. But I gave her the script to look over and she was like, okay, change of plans. I have to draw this now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, was super excited for it, and the longer we've worked together, the more I'm like, yeah, you were the right person for this, like the whole time.
Well, she reminds me a lot of. I'm going to forget the name of the main artist. Are you familiar with the Destiny New York comic that Pat Shan does?
I'm familiar. I haven't read that. I've read a side story because it was.
Yeah, there's a lot of side stories.
So it was, we were published together in By Visibility, the second one.
Okay.
July.
Okay.
And there's a Destiny New York story in that one. So I've read that one, but I don't have a ton of exposure.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, and I'm not sure who the artist. Like, there's a question because he does work with other artists on the side stories. But the main artist on the main series, Bianca's art reminds me a lot of that. And Destiny New York has a lot in common tonally, I think, with the pages we read from SMUT, where it has that very similar. Where it is a big chunk of it is relationship, dramedy, and so it is a lot of like people standing around talking and talking about them and their lives and what's going on in their lives and things like that. And I think a thing like SMUT, when you're going to do this, you need an artist who can draw attractive figures, attractive characters, right? It can't be an art style that is too out there where it's like, it could be an amazing, super cool, eye-popping art style. But if the point is to have it be also a NSFW by the modern Kickstarter terms type of a thing, where it's like, you want people want to be there for the sexiness. That style has to be able to draw characters where it's like they want to see them in sexy situations. So that's why we hire attractive actors and things like that to do the same thing in film. So yeah, exactly.
And I knew that I wanted the one rule that I had was that I didn't want it to be drawn in, not to. I'm not going to call out a specific comic or anything, but like there's a certain way.
Say their names. Say their names. Say their names.
Say their names. No, I'm not here to start flame. I have a no drama policy. It's all internal. I don't start flame wars. I don't.
Dallas does too. There's a reason he's not on social media. He just likes to egg other people on.
I do too. I just like to egg other people on.
No, but I think that there's a specific style in which not even not safe for work, just like very fan servicey comics get drawn, where there's a lot of posing and bending over and exaggerated proportions and
the fan service, right?
Very same face syndrome, and
it's the point.
I didn't want that at all. I wanted something very different.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't we go, now that we've talked a lot about it, why don't we go take a look at the Kickstarter page and actually let everyone see what we've been talking about. Oh, wait, that's my sentence. There we go. Present, share screen, SMUT. SMUT.
I should have named it
Here we go.
SMUT.
SMUT.
There you go. SCHMUT. That would have been so much more like Twitter safe. I could have shared it a lot more.
Right.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
SMUT.
If only.
Yeah.
Anyway, SMUT.
You'll set the next one in Germany, and then that'll deal with that.
A not safe for work slice of life comedy. A personal trainer attempts to clean up her act and get to know her date before jumping his bones. Easier said than done. A 32-page comic about trust and sex. As you can see, they are doing fantastic. You're almost halfway to that 20K goal, that pie in the sky 20K goal that you hope to achieve at some point in time. So you're getting there. Yeah,
I would love to. I don't necessarily think it's in the cards for this campaign, but I would love to see. Right. Of course, I would. Love to see
you'll have your end of campaign explosion, right? Where there'll be that one last like real good pop. I know you're in the dead zone right now, where it's like every backer is just like hard won and like clawed into the campaign.
And let me just say to anyone watching, when you back, especially when you back during the like middle period, I see it, I appreciate it. It makes my day every time.
Yes. And as someone who's run a campaign too, when you do it during the dead zone, you're not competing with the other however many people that did it at the same time with you, all at the beginning, all at the end, where it's hard. You can send out, I tried to send like a thank you note to absolutely everyone who backed, but during those crazy moments, that can take a couple days to like for that message to get to them. When you back during the dead zone, I am like, you are my whole focus for that day.
Absolutely.
You're just like, you're amazing. And sometimes these people are backing like the digital reward, and it's like $5-8, whatever it is, and you're like, I don't care. I'm like, amazing. Where did you come from? I don't even know where you came from, but you're here and I love you for it. So yeah, I'm with you there. And 403 backers, man. So that's a great backer count.
That's amazing. Gosh. Yeah.
I'm very proud of the reach that this has been able to achieve so far. We're on pace, I'll say. We're on pace for our most funded campaign so far.
Beautiful.
Up to this point.
And if you're gonna dip your toe into that not safe for work Kickstarter territory, like it should be, like, get you some. That's kind of the point. It's a little bit of the point, of the comic itself, and then the branding of the comic, and it's like, but also a lot of these not safe for work campaigns, they do try and push the narrative that it's like there's a story here, there's characters too, like it's not just about that. And some easier to believe than others when you actually look at the campaign page and look at the details of the comic. But this one for sure, I'm like, we've read the preview pages. We're gonna let's go down actually here and keep looking at some of this stuff, because you'll see some of these preview pages. So here we are. Now, this was great. I did like this. Think Giant Days meets Sunstone. For those of you, Google those, guys. If either of you are unfamiliar, I was unfamiliar with Sunstone. I did know Giant Days, but I Googled Sunstone. And
read Sunstone.
They both look amazing.
If you don't read,
that again?
Read Sunstone. If you don't read SMUT, I'm going to be sad, but I'll understand. Read Sunstone. It's so good.
Yeah. I mean, Giant Days, I can back that up. So, yeah. So take a look, Google both of those, as well as coming to check out this Kickstarter campaign page. You have until, let's see, we have it at the ticker at the bottom there, but you have until May 8th at some point in time. So read that ticker at the bottom of the screen, and let's take a look. This is some of the preview art on the inside. These are our three main characters, Rita, Jess, and Dakota. Jess is the one that got the waiter to go get the oat milk from across the street. So
it's always a Jess. It's always a Jess.
Always a Jess. Yeah, there he is coming back with the
And they all have their own conflict in the book, but each issue takes them kind of one at a time. So this first issue focuses on Dakota. She is a personal trainer. Dates around quite a bit, still very young, enjoying being in that space, but also looking to like not lose a good thing if it comes along. So her big conflict is about trying to set up boundaries and respect those boundaries for herself, and find out what happens when someone else also respects those boundaries. And when it's acceptable to tear them down.
There you go.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun. She's a little crass. She's kind of messy, but she's. I love all three of the characters for very different reasons, but I think I had the most fun writing this first issue.
Absolutely, and here you go. We can see. So these are the. This is these are the safer images. This is safe, and then
she draws a hell of a hell of a man's ass, I have to say.
That is an Aliza Lomoli cover. She did the two versions of that cover, and the
top notch.
The cake on that. She really drew. The hell out of those features. Very flattering for everyone involved.
Really are.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yes.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Beautiful. But yeah, you can see here, these are the full preview pages. So this whole scene, as we were mentioning earlier, kind of takes place at this diner/restaurant. And there's the stair. And then there's the guy goes skulking off. And I liked also how you had this, we'll keep going, but you can kind of see all the body language and what's going on between the folks and whatnot. And you get a little bit in this opening scene, you're getting, even though we're going to focus on Dakota later in the issue, this is sort of the intro of all three characters. So you're getting a little bit of all of them. Here's a quick flashback of it's Jess, Dakota. What's this one's name?
This is Rita. So yeah, Rita's conflict revolves around being in a long-term relationship that is a little bit on the rocks, not going so well. They aren't communicating as well as they should, and her story is very much about sort of what it takes to pull yourself out of that and either recognize when it's time to cut the cord or put in the work and try and salvage if it's worth keeping. But yeah, one of the things I went into this saying was, if I want to talk about sex and be earnest about it, and if you're not willing to broach what bad sex looks like, then it's harder to talk about what good sex looks like.
Yeah, very true.
Right. And this is the scene where it's quick flashback where she's thinking about how good or not good the sex she's currently having is. And you can see the person she's with is literally holding his nose while he's down there. So that is kind of tells you all you need to know about whether this is going well or not.
Yeah. If you do want to see the uncensored sample pages, by the way, I have a link at the bottom of them on the page, so you can hop over and see what the full art looks like without that nice little logo making it safe for Kickstarter.
Beautiful. That's a good idea. I did not do that. I need to do that when we relaunch our own. I'm stealing that because I only had the censored pages. I should do that as well.
You want to let people know, and then we can see in this.
And I think this is another thing I liked, that the showing, since this is about Dakota, we had just seen Jess basically command to this poor guy, and Dakota is just like, hey, can I get any attention at all? And he's just like, yeah,
not at all.
And so that difference between like the energy coming from both of them and how they interact with other people was very good.
Immediate contrast between the leads and really sets up each of their individual stories and what they're about.
Yep. It's very, when we only had 6 sample pages to go off of, I sometimes wonder going in, this is the Wine and Comics pairing show. I'm like, I got a pair of wine with this, and I'm like, is 6 pages going to give me enough to grasp what the heck it is that I'm supposed to be pairing? But these did the trick. They're very well thought out, like plain, like what you're doing with these 6 pages as the first introductory 6 pages. So that was incredibly helpful. And this is one more page where you actually get some of Jess's background and love life, just a tiny little bit. And then there's that link where you can click here and go see the uncensored pages.
Absolutely.
All right. And then stretch goals, they are almost at $10,000 because 8,000 was the goal. So 10,000 is going to be the first stretch goal. And Digital Indie Bundle is expanded with 2 new comics, Spirit of the Dragon #1 and Black Bishop #1. A new sticker and enamel pin both become available for purchase. All right.
Absolutely.
There it is.
Shark-like
and powerful.
Nice. That is Dakota's tattoo. She has a big tattoo on her shoulder, and one of the lines that made me giggle, and this is another thing that I've definitely heard my wife just saying to herself, not to be funny, just she's just naturally that funny of a person. But yeah, you are strong, you are resilient, you are shark-like and powerful, and and yeah, I vibe with it, and I decided to turn it into merch. And
that is a fascinating line. Yeah.
I'm excited to see what how people respond to it. I think it'll be quite popular when it comes out. But
I think it will as well. Yeah,
we've got that as a sticker and as a as an enamel pin. I may or may not adjust some of these values. I don't know. Everything is everything's still up in the air. Right. But at $15K, we're going to give everyone a temporary tattoo of the shark-like and powerful.
Beautiful.
We're also going to make a smutty print by the artist Flops. He's working on that right now after he shakes off a flu. Yeah. And we have a playlist that I made just because I love pairing music with comics and what I'm working on. So
I'm a sucker for those too. Yeah,
absolutely.
Whenever Kickstarter campaigns do that, like for the comic or for the character or whatever it is, I'm just like, yes.
Yeah, I have a 20-song playlist on Spotify, and I'm going to share that once we hit 15K or whatever that goal ends up being.
Right.
Third stretch goal is a print by Melissa Capriglione. And that's, I'm pretty sure how you pronounce that. She is the creator of Basil and Oregano. One of my, if you haven't read it, it's very good. It's really cute. A magic academia sort of sapphic love story that is about cooking that I absolutely adore, and my wife really loves as well. And we're gonna give out a print by her completely free. We're also gonna throw up a limited edition hollow foil for people to snatch up, whatever the most popular cover is.
Yep.
And our last stretch goal that we have planned is extra back matter, preview pages, etc. Just extra stuff for people to see behind the scenes stuff, as well as an 11x17 poster by Chloe Brailsford. If you don't know her, she is internet famous for the thick black canary. Which, if you've seen that image, you know immediately what I'm talking about. But she is a really, really cool artist that I've wanted to work with for a long time. And and I'm one of the coolest people on the planet. And I definitely would love to be able to unlock that and get her art out into the world.
Very nice.
Beautiful. We got some character sketches. There's that tattoo that we were just looking at.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like to do these just to make sure that people connect with the characters. As you said, I think the sample pages do a good job of that. I wanted to, as much as possible, really give you what their conflicts are and who they are as much as I can in the first 10 pages, so that you maybe develop a bias for one of them and want to see their story in the future, but also just have a really strong idea of what's to come.
Yeah.
But if you want more detail, I give you more detail character by character in this kind of breakdown.
Little character breakdown, section. And there's Lance. We have not met Lance in the sample pages yet, but we've seen on that cover, on that not safe for work cover.
He is the greatest ass in town.
Definitely a lead.
Absolutely. He messaged on Sparkle, which is this world version of Tinder.
Nice.
All right, and Jess. And
Jess
that's Jess's significant other.
Yes, yeah. Alejandra.
Allie.
I love their story. They of the three couples, Dakota is getting into a new relationship potentially. Rita's in a relationship that's kind of on the rocks. Jess is in a relationship that is very loving and caring and well established. And I really like being able to talk about those kind of couples, because I feel like just the nature of storytelling and drama is you're going to seek conflict. Yeah. And a lot of times when you portray relationships, they're going to be a little bit more on the rocks. There's something tumultuous going on in those relationships. Right. And as a result, I don't think we get to see enough examples of what really solid, good relationships look like. Yeah, that's right. So I love including examples of those in my fiction. And as a result, I think that's like my favorite pairing is those two.
Awesome. I mean, I do think that one of my favorite parts about growing up when I did in comics was all the examples of, because, when you're young, you're reading all the big brand stuff, right? So you're reading like Marvel and DC and whatnot. And there were all the couples that were actually doing insanely well during my time, like the Lois Lane Superman, the Reed Richards Mrs. Fantastic, the Peter Parker Mary Jane, and they were all getting married and yet working long term. And they hit this point in like the 00s somewhere where all the companies got freaked out about it. And at some point they were like, we have to undo this. We have to like take it away.
We have to make them fight constantly. Like let Peter
make them fight
just a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's not like there wasn't drama time from now and again. It's not like you ever have a relationship where drama is like, does not exist, never rears its ugly head. You never have to work at it. It's like, no, that's not how it works either. It's somewhere in between, but you can definitely hit a point where you've figured out the relationship enough that it's like, this is the exception, not the rule, the drama. Yeah. Right. And so it's like it happens, but we also know how to deal with it when it happens and deal with it in a relatively healthy way. So I think we hit a point where it's like suddenly comics became all about the drama in an unhealthy way all over again, rather than seeing working couples being like, they have their issues, they have their things they need to work through, especially when you're dating a superhero or you're both superheroes. And it's like, okay, there's shit to deal with there. Right. It's like, that's not easy, but but you deal with it. And then somewhere down the line, this weird logic came in where it's like, no, it only has to be you're single and desperate and trying to find love, or relationships come and go on a revolving door basis. And it's just like, what are you doing? This is like that to me is boring, because it's like, that's every 90210 movie or TV show and whatnot, on that's ever existed, like every soap opera that's ever existed. That's not that that's the easy stuff to write. Like, now try writing something a little more complicated. So I think one of these. Yeah.
I think that's the issue. So much of comics was trying to emulate what was happening in television and
soap operas.
Soap operas Save the Cat, and that's precisely what the issue is. So I do think we are kind of swinging back in the other direction, where people are taking big risks and swinging wide and trying to tell interesting stories that don't fit the formats and the formula. So
Well, and I think once again, the focus in all mediums has been about, because we're starting to be much more aware of things like consent and respecting each other, and like where the boundaries are in everything for all people. And that suddenly has become like, so like how we represent a relationship now has to be like, this needs to be acknowledged. Like, this needs to be part of the story. And that it's hard to get away with a lot of melodramatic bullshit when you also have to show the real stuff in there. It's like, you can't just make it this fantasy, crazy relationship that has very little resemblance to, or should have very little resemblance to real life.
Yeah, and there's already so much drama apparent, I think, like inherent to clear communication and consent. And like, you can tell really rich stories just exploring that, which was, again, another kind of thesis of SMUT was, how do we tell really interesting stories that don't revolve about sex, that don't revolve around literal danger, or put our characters in super compromising positions. Like, everything is above board, everything is consensual, but there's still a lot of drama there. That's A, closer to real life, B, a lot healthier, and C, to me at least, a lot more interesting.
Yes. Yeah. I think anyone who's been in a healthy relationship ever, like, doesn't matter whether you're in it right now, but if you've had one, it's like that is more interesting. Like, you want, I think for me too, because, fiction is often about escapism, right? And it's always been weird to me that we can say that over and over again. And yet when it comes to romance, the escapism is always the worst part of romance. That always has been kind of like odd to me. Like, why is that calling to us when the escapism
is never they're married and happy and they don't have any problems. No one's ever cheated on each other. It's like, it's all gelling really well. It's always, and then the most extreme wild thing happens to split them up.
Right. Yeah. And then they're horrible to each other, and they can't. And then even if they do find a way back together at the end, if you really look at the story, you're like, but they're both kind of assholes. Like, how? Like, did either of them earn that ending? I don't think they did.
I do think a lot of creators, unfortunately, when it comes to the romantic stuff, that is generally the truest form of that creator. They're definitely weaving in their grudges, their sort of issues with past relationships.
Again, why I was worried about writing, because it puts so much of you on the table to write good real romance, and to write what you think a healthy version of a sex life looks like, puts a lot of you out there, whether you want it to or not. Ultimately, I felt like it was worth doing and risking, but yeah, it's a scary prospect to be like, people are going to see you in ways you maybe didn't expect or want them to.
Right. Now, to be fair, in fiction, you can be weaving stories that you've heard from other people. Like, it doesn't all have to be, this is all stuff from my life directly. It's like, well, you can, we all have,
which was the other balance, I think, was I definitely didn't want this to read like, my personal fantasy journal or anything like that. I wanted this to feel very grounded and realistic and pull from a lot of different sources while also being true to my own experience. And I hope I'm as skilled a storyteller as I give myself credit for, that I was able to pull it off. But time will tell. We'll see.
Time will tell. Time will tell. I mean, again, great first couple pages. So I think it's shaping up to be everything that you want it to be. And then here's Rita. The third. Now, is this the order the issues are going to go in? Are we getting Dakota, Jess, then Rita in that order?
Dakota, Jess, Rita. Yeah, Rita is the last. I did that on purpose because I think Rita has the biggest to use a very inside, not inside baseball, but like if you're into creative writing, you've heard this term before. If you're a very casual listener, you probably haven't. I think she has the best major dramatic question, which is, will she be breaking up? Like, will she break up with Kyle? Will she break up with her boyfriend? That's really dramatic. That's something that's urgent and that we want to know. And I thought delaying that to the end would be a really interesting prospect of like, okay, that was great. I'm so glad we got to read this. But what's going to happen with Rita? Just to build that tension up.
Something to lure people back. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I've got, I won't say it while we're live, but it's, I have already knowing as little as I know of your writing style. I think I know the answer to that question, but I won't say. All right. So rewards, we've got the digital indie bundle just at $1. So you're not getting this comic with the $1, but if all you can give us $1, or all you want to give us $1, you will get some freebies thrown in there. That's for those who aren't that familiar with Kickstarter, that's a very traditional Kickstarter thing these days. And then we've got and I recognize almost all of these: Tall Guard, Spider Squirrel. Yeah.
I was very surprised by the reception to me asking if people wanted to be a part of it. I'm friends with a lot of these creators, and I was really excited to get to share their work with people. So if nothing else, come in and give $1 just to get these guys' work, because they are phenomenal storytellers.
Yep. I can vouch for almost all of them. I have not read Hush Ronin before, but honestly, it looks great. The cover looks great.
He's fantastic. I definitely recommend his work.
Awesome. And then $7 gets you the digital issue of #1.
This is a 32-page digital. That is the big thing.
32 pages of story, or some back matter and some front matter.
32 pages of story. There is also a digital upgrade, a digital deluxe upgrade that gets you back matter, cover gallery, extras, and stuff like that.
And that is
I wanted, that is not listed anywhere on the page, but it's an add-on for
gotcha. Okay,
it's an add-on for all of them. You can pick it up with any of the tiers, but it was intended for digital backers that wanted to see more, as much as possible, but couldn't necessarily afford to have something shipped.
Got it.
Cool. And then 14 for the physical copy of issue #1, which comes with the digital bundle as well.
Absolutely.
Then the SMUT starters kit that starts adding stickers and pins.
Yeah.
I love SMUT sticker. I like the tiny cactus.
I love the tiny. Yeah, I will be a better person for you, is what that says. Love the tiny cactus. I'm really proud of this tier because we've always done like an everything tier that's like you discounted in a big way. It's like 20-25% off. That includes everything that we put into the campaign. But to have like a smaller version of that, still a little bit discounted, you get essentially like 1.5 stickers free. But just comes with like the regular cover and a couple of the extras, has been both really popular and also I think is just, a creative way to give people more bang for their buck. So
beautiful. And then the B cover at $30, Thirst Trap B cover. Yeah. So extra sexy, but still safe for work, but extra sexy.
Yeah, we wanted to do a series, like a series of variant covers that would stick around. So Thirst Trap is like, the idea is these are pictures that the characters would take of themselves to throw up on Instagram, or of other things. But the one for the next issue is the first piece of art that we made for the series, and I'm really excited to show it off. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. All right, and then $30 gets you the Safe for Work C cover, Jim Queen.
Aliza
so, again, kind of extra sexy, but not a lot of skin, but extra sexy. If you, look at that positioning.
I think that a character's posture and attitude informs like how attractive they are much more than like how much skin they're revealing. But if you like skin, we do have a version of
scroll on down
as well. Yeah.
And for $10 more, at $40, you do get the Not Safe for Work D cover. Ba-boom. Finally, what some of you at the very least are definitely here for.
It's popular. I'll say that much.
It's
popular. Do we know who she used for the model for this? Because
is there a what? Is there a model?
I was like, do we know who she used for the model for this?
Because he's like, what real life man did she use for the model on this one? I need to know. If she has his IG handle, that would be even better.
I do not know the trade secrets of Miss Aliza Rompoli, and nor would she share them with me.
That's right. And
Aliza is fantastic. She's the artist behind A Thing Called Truth, Alice in Leatherland. Just a brilliant artist.
You see Alice in Leatherland?
Alice in Leatherland, yes. Yeah. No, it's what you think it is.
I'm looking for it right now as we speak.
It's a great book. It's a great comic.
For me, A Thing Called Truth is like, I have all of the first series. I got Image Comics, and then I did the entire volume 2 that they kickstarted into being. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Absolutely.
I was completely confused when I got to the end, because the Image Comics series, I remember the story, like they kind of didn't tell them they were canceled. They just got to issue 5 and just sort of stopped the series. And when I was pre-ordering it, they kept saying it was like, I think by the time issue 2 or 3 came out, they were like issue 3 of 5, issue 4 of 5, issue 5 of 5. And I got to the end of issue 5 and I was like, nothing ended. Yeah. I'm like, that was a strange place to stop everything. And then when the Kickstarter finally, because they were dead, I went online and I looked all over Google to like try and find any mention of the strange ending of the Image series. No one was saying Bupkis. Like no one was talking about it. And then finally that Kickstarter dropped and I was like, oh, thank God. I'm like, I was so confused by that. I'm like, I really liked the series, but what the fuck was up with that ending?
I will say, because I'm sure Aliza and Yolanda signed an NDA, signed something that like they're not allowed to talk about it,
or just being political about it in a good way. Like it's like you don't want to like a comic getting canceled is what it is, right? It's like it's no one's. You don't want to burn bridges over it, and so they're like, let's just wait until we have let's find out how and if we're going to try and get volume 2 or the rest of the series done, and then we'll say something, but let's make sure all parties are okay with it, and you know,
and
yeah, absolutely, which I understand. I was just, I expected them to just be like, it got canceled, and no one was even saying that. So it was just sort of like, what happened? That is such a weird moment. So I'm sure there were some weirdness going on there, but for whatever reason, they worked it out. They got Volume 2 out there, and on Kickstarter, it funded, and that was. I think they raised they wanted 30K, and I think they raised a little over it. So it's like they did a really good job.
Yeah, they did a lot of it. I'll say that's one of the things I really love and appreciate about Kickstarter is like, if traditionally that sort of would have been it. That sort of would have been it. Is like we would have gotten 5 issues, nothing would have ended, and we never would have heard anything again. Yeah. And because of like the crowdfunding model, we're able to point very pointedly to the fans of that series and say, hey, you want to see, you want an ending? You want like how it's supposed to actually end? Yep. Here you go. We're going to finish the series. We have that opportunity now. Yes.
There are so many series from my childhood, like black and white indie comics that just like halted at some point. They just stopped publication. A lot of them were self-published, and they've all come back in the Kickstarter, or so many of them have come back in the Kickstarter era and finished. And you have no idea how thrilled I am with that. I am just like over the moon that some of these have come back and found their ending. And I love this era for Kickstarter. I can't, for whatever its flaws, and it's got, like all technologies we were talking about earlier, it comes with its own crosses to bear, but I mean the positives are like these opportunities simply did not exist prior 100%. To now, so it's worth it. Yeah.
No, it's great. I'm very glad that we have the opportunity to have a thing called Truth Be Finished, and for even weird obscure series from like the 90s and 2000s to finally like find their audience.
Yes. All right. So going down to $50, you get the SMUT Not Safe for Work. Yep.
You know, I'm gonna say I'm realizing now for the first time 2.5 weeks into the campaign, this is $55. That is incorrect on there, but either way, yeah.
All right. So 55. You'll find that out because it will be there. It is. I just passed it. It will be correct. There it is. Pledge $55. So yeah, this will be this one over here. So SMUT Not Safe for Work starter kit 55, which then includes the thirst trap postcard, which you're adding on top. Yes.
So the Not Safe for Work cover from Elisa Romboli, as all the stuff that you get from the regular starter kit, as well as the thirst trap postcard.
Beautiful.
Which is just we wanted a way to celebrate like a big part of the that series, the thirst trap variant cover is the sort of Instagrammy set dressing cover dressing that's on it with the hashtags and stuff. Yeah. But we wanted to just celebrate the art for what it is, because it is great. So we decided to throw in this little postcard size print.
Cool.
Beautiful. I mean, it's a gorgeous image. So I like that there's another way than, just collecting all the comics. Like you can get that Not Safe for Work comic, which again is what a lot of people are coming for in the first place. And then also throw in that thirst trap, which is
shout out to Eileen Wajaja. She is a phenomenal artist and just got picked up for a major translated series that I'm really excited about. So
very cool.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely check her out.
And then $100, everything, all the covers, and all the everything else,
all the stuff from the starter kit, everything you could ask for. I sign everything as well. I mean, I suppose you could tell me not to sign it if you don't want that, but I will. Otherwise, you get my signature. And I sometimes I'll throw in some extra digital stuff if we unlock stuff in the stretch goals as well. So everything gets you a lot, and it's discounted about 25%, I believe, from what it would be picking them all up individually.
Gorgeous. And then $250 to get a page, an actual page of art.
Yeah. So we work digitally. So we you know, I love being able to send out like original art, original Bristol board art. Most artists work digitally, so in order to kind of compensate for that, we have the Adopt-A-Page system. The way this works is we print out a one-of-a-kind print for you, send it to you with your comic. Though you get to read the comic first to decide which page you want to adopt. We put your name on that page in the actual comic, as well as on the front, the inside front cover, to let people know that you've adopted the page up front. So you get a lot of perks on top of getting 2 copies of the book with your choice of cover, and pretty much all of the other add-ons that we have. We want to hook you up as best we can. And, the more money you spend, the more that we're gonna do that for you.
Cool.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right. And then add-ons, of course. You can just give a little extra money. That's what the tip jar is. If you're just like, I love this, I love you. Here's a little extra money. Don't give me anything extra, but here's a little extra money. Then you can throw on the stickers, the pins, the postcard.
Extra copy of SMUT. Very nice.
Yep.
Indeed.
Enamel pen. Very nice.
Hey, the By Visibility Anthology. Yes, signed. Yes, we're.
So I am featured in both By Visibility anthologies, and both are available for purchase.
Nice.
Same with From the Static. That is a Band of Bards horror anthology that I'm featured in. Descent into Dread. That's all me. That's all me and my writing partner.
Okay.
Very cool.
And then we have our 2 other series, Frankenstein the Unconquered and Mechaton, available as well. Digital catalog, that's Frankenstein the Unconquered and Mechaton, and that is 9 issues total that you're getting for that bundle.
Wow.
Cool. All right.
Absolutely. And then extra copies of the variant
the other covers
right. As well. And we did add, it's not listed on here, but into the campaign, as I said, we added the digital deluxe bundle. So for $5 extra, you get a whole bunch of back matter and extra and and extra stuff. We also have a limited number of cross stitching. My wife is a rabid cross stitcher. Our house is full of them. She just loves working on it. And she decided to throw up I think 4 is what she decided she would work on. The cactus that says, I will be a better person for you. She's going to, she made that pattern. She's already working on the first one. So if you want that sort of hand decorated piece of art in your home, that will be available for you. She's going to put some unique flourishes on them, so they're all different as well.
Very nice.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And then yes, a few more anthologies. We have from the Static.
From the Static
anthology. Yep.
Yes. Which Band of Bards threw that together a little while ago, and I believe, the introductory story for that one called The Infant, which is a piece I worked with Rachel Allen Everett on that was super fun. And it's about a whaling ship that cuts open a whale and discovers something that shouldn't be there.
Nice.
Who's that, Jonah?
Beautiful. Yeah. Except he's supposed to be there.
Right.
All right. And then the free Not Safe for Work art print when you pledge to both the Tiny Island. Oh, this is a long title. What's the full title of Tiny Island?
Yeah,
Tiny Island Over the Kingdom Under the Sea. There we go.
Yes. CJ Hudson created it's a really cool idea. I really like the comic. Reached out to him when I heard about it, and we decided to commission Rio Burton to create this kind of crossover piece with both of our characters involved. Dakota looks like a Greek goddess in that one, so I absolutely adore this print. I'm going to be hanging this up somewhere in my house. I definitely go support Tiny Island if you can. It has a little under a week left on its campaign, so if you back both of our campaigns, you get a nice piece of art for free.
Very cool.
Beautiful. All right. And then, of course, we've basically talked about the market for this, or what he's going for. And then, of course,
Absolutely.
Wells is one of our writers. His wife, Brianna, is his co-writer. We've got Bianca Milanes. Boom. And then DC Hopkins. If you haven't heard of DC, I mean, he's around, man. He's
Letterer extraordinaire.
extraordinaire.
Yeah, he's the head of And World Design, and World Design does like every other comic that you read.
Right. Designer working for clients such as Boom, Dark Horse, DC, Dynamite, Heavy Metal, Humanoids, IDW, Image, Line Forge, Oni. I mean, come on.
Yeah. All over the place. Krista is an old friend from Comic Book Yeti and a phenomenal editor. Definitely had a big impact on the series. Extremely happy to have them around. Brenda, the designer, is easily one of my favorite creative partners. I work with them on almost everything that I do. They make my life just so much easier in every single way. And then, as I've talked about Eileen and Eliza quite a bit, but both of them are phenomenal artists, and you should definitely check out their work.
Beautiful. All right, we know this is all the usual stuff. We know what it is. We know what it's all going towards.
In the weeds, the shipping information and how we're going to package it, budget concerns, and just so that we believe in as much transparency as humanly possible.
Good.
Right.
That's great.
Right. So you're looking at around late September for digital copies and November to January, depending on how far they're sending it for that physical. For international, actually October for domestic. There we go.
I try to make as few promises as possible, especially when it comes to international. Now we will make sure that international shipping is worth your while. We will sign your copies for your comics for free. If it's already meant to be signed, then we'll give you some extra add-ons. I always want to make sure that people feel like they're being taken care of, and that the price of shipping is worth it, because no one should have to pay $20 to get their comics. That's ridiculous. But unfortunately, that is the state of international shipping.
It is.
What I'll say is, we work really hard to make sure that our comics are going to get to you in one piece, and that that you're not going to feel like you've paid for something that was destroyed along the way. So we take care of our comics as much as we can. And as far as that timeline is concerned, that is our most conservative estimate. That's our most far out there that we can conceive for some reason, without necessarily taking into account, like, if unfortunately, I have had this happen. Like, if the artist breaks their hand, for example, no way we could have seen that coming, and that is obviously going to delay things for a little while. That said, everything else, all things considered, that is our longest time frame that we see, and we've already sort of come up on that. It's going to be, again, no promises, but we're pretty sure it's going to be a shorter timeline than that, because we've already started on new pages. Because we're already funded, I gave the green light to Bianca. She's got 7 pages thumbnailed and cleaned up and ready for inks. And that was in a very short amount of time. I'm hoping to have more sample pages to show off before the end of the campaign. So, and in as little as that, we will have new pages coming out, let alone, if we can have it all shipped out by July or by August, that would be ideal for me.
Yeah.
I can see that happening.
Fantastic. Beautiful. Seriously.
All right, man. Anything? So I'm assuming, is that everything, or any last bits about the campaign itself before we take it off the screen?
I think that's it. We have the Error 404 backers, which is a recent development, so that's fun. I
was gonna say, I think you just went up one.
Yeah, we just hit 400. That was super exciting, and I'm very excited to see how far we can take this campaign. I was never expecting it to blow up in the truly spectacular $40,000, $50,000 range that some campaigns are able to achieve. But just to have it, be this popular is really humbling and something that I hoped for, but not something I expected.
Right.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, let me take that off the screen. And now it is time to reveal the wines we've decided to pair with SMUT issue number 1.
That's right.
I think it's my turn to go first, Dallas. Yeah.
Sure.
So let's.
We'll go with that. I'll approve that.
All right. So I don't know what Dallas picked. We never discussed this beforehand. For those who might be new for this, we always try and surprise each other. We just independently read whatever we have. And then we mostly stick to the same ideas. Dallas has a little bit of his own thing that he does that I sometimes join him with. But most of the time I have my own calibration for this. But for the most part, we are trying to match or contrast the sensibilities of the comic itself. So either we're trying to pair it tit for tat, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended for the type of comic it is, or we are trying to, if it's a comic that has an extreme style or tonality to it or aesthetic, you might be taking a wine that sort of like contrasts with that to balance it, where it's like, this is extremely one thing. So maybe I don't want to drink something that is also extremely that one thing. Let me actually back it off. But for this one, I thought I might have been going with something else, but I tried this. And I gotta say, I'm going to reveal what it is right off the bat, and then I'm going to talk about it, because I was just like, oh yeah, if this is going to be a comic about relationships and sex, this is what I'm drinking. And this is very tiny on the label, so I'm going to see if it will show. So essentially it is a natural, organic, white, quote unquote, wine, but as you can see, it's got some pigment to it. It's got some grit in there. So this is unfiltered, unfined, organic, all that fun stuff. So it's got some crap in there. But what this is it is called, oh goodness. So it is Wine Fella's Neon Dream. If that is, it's kind of coming into focus. It's very tiny print on the bottle. And it is a white Zinfandel. All right, which is white Zinfandel. The reason I bought this bottle, I was so intrigued. White Zinfandel has a bad rap. White Zinfandel is known as, like, people who don't drink wine drink white Zinfandel, right?
Yeah.
Because it's always made. And the reason it is, for those people who aren't big wine nerds, you can make any wine white. You just don't soak it on the skins, right? So white wine is not always made with white skin grapes. You can make it with red grapes. Some red grapes that works really well with, and other red grapes it does not. There's a reason Zinfandel is always a red, not like 999 out of 1,000 times, is because when you make it white, when you don't give it that skin soakage, it's essentially bland as fuck. It's like there is no flavor to that juice. It is just juice. And so then they leave some sugar in there to make it semi-sweet, so you have something to taste. But then all you're tasting is kind of sugar water. And that is why it's very frowned upon by the wine world. And for people who don't actually drink wine, is you have this ever so slightly alcoholic. The other thing, not to get too wine nerdy, the only way to make, wine is alcoholic because you're fermenting the sugar into alcohol. So when you leave sugar behind, you're leaving alcohol out of it, or a certain percentage of alcohol out of it. So you're letting some of it turn into alcohol, but not all of it. So then you wind up with some crazy low amount, like 6 to 8% alcohol. And then this sweetness and no other flavors to speak of. And white Zinfandel tends to be like, it's like, if you're a serious wine drinker, it's just utter shite. You don't give it at the time of day. So this really intrigued me because this was a proper Wine Fellas is a well-known wine label that does a lot of the organic, biodynamic, natural wine. And so when they made it, I'm like, they made a white Zinfandel. I'm like, that's crazy. I'm like, okay. And when you look at it again, it's borderline an orange wine, almost. Like it's got enough stuff in there. It actually has this orange tint. It is not an orange wine. Orange wine is made from white skin grapes. When you soak it on the white skins, like a red wine, that's when you get your orange wine, and you actually extract all the stuff from the skins like a red wine, but it just happens to not be red skins. This is actually a red skin grape, Zinfandel, but all the things that are listed on this motherfucker, it is, let's see, it gives you all the sulfur. There's no added sulfur, but it tells you how much is there's a natural amount that's in there, the sulfites. It tells you how much of that, the acidity, the hydrogen, the volatile acidity, the malic acid. But this is unfiltered, unfined, malolactic. They did allow malolactic fermentation, which is actually really interesting because that is a secondary fermentation that sometimes some wines they give it to, and it adds flavor. It adds lots of weird flavors to wine. And then no cold stabilization. So when you actually put it in your fridge, a lot of things will form on the inside of the wine because things will separate from the liquid. When that happens, doesn't hurt anything, doesn't extract any flavor. It's just weird. And then it's also and then it's aged in stainless steel. So why this wine? This wine, it's slightly fizzy too, which is interesting because of that natural fermentation. It keeps some of the carbonation. Once they put it in the bottle, it's not entirely done yet, and it creates a little more CO2 that gets in there. So this, with the extra malolactic fermentation in this thing, it both smells and tastes like sex. I'm not going to lie, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This thing is 100%. I had
to boring sex or exciting sex.
So let me just say this: Rita's boyfriend would not smell this. Okay, we're gonna put it that way. There was a reason I had to freeze frame a little bit on him holding his nose when we were going through the Kickstarter, because it's like this is a part of why I chose this wine. I was like, now I will say I enjoy this wine. I would not hold my nose while doing what Rita's boyfriend was doing, but it is enjoyable. This is a well balanced.
Welcome to the Wine and Comics Pairing Dating Hour.
Exactly. But I mean, it has that. So on the nose, like it has that, like, oh man, that's both
very
flavor
distinct.
and on the nose, it has that specific kind of umami, and you know what I'm talking about. Where it's like all the flavors in one. It's a little. It's got that slight hint of sweetness, but it's very dialed down.
Don't make the joke, Dallas. Don't make that joke. Don't make that joke, Dallas. Don't make that joke. Sorry,
I believe in you, Dallas. You can make it through this.
Go on.
But I mean, you've got that, like, I enjoy this. So if anyone gets offended by some of these descriptions, I mean them in good ways. But it has that.
As a bartender server for a decade of my life, I've heard some of the most wild description for wine given entirely in good faith. I've heard as descriptors. I've heard cat piss. I've heard dirty diaper. I've heard So I completely believe that when you say that, you're just like, this is great. This is great. Not saying it's throw anyone off.
And some of it is context, because of course some of the smells and flavors of sex, when it's not sex, you're like, why would I enjoy that? But it does work well still. Again, the wine's balanced. It's not overkill on any of these smells or flavors, but there is that slightly sulfuric scent to the whole thing, because you're down there and there's things going on. You've got definitely the salinity. There is a saltiness. There is this soft sweetness to it that's just in the back. And there is a fruitiness, but it's like browned fruit, not like fresh fruit. Sorry, ladies, it's not fresh fruit. There is, but it is still, and like it's not, fresh off the vine, at peak of ripeness. That's not what that is.
Okay, you're getting a little too deep, and you're getting a little too deep in the descriptor. Stop there.
I understand what he's talking. I fully get.
I get it. But okay.
Yes. But I will say it has that umami. Everyone knows what that umami is for them with whoever they like to do the deed with. And this wine is so perfectly encapsulates, like when I started drinking it and whiffing it, and I was like, This gets me in the mood for this comic because it's what it's about. It's what it's talking about. It's what these characters are dealing with. And it is still, as a White Zinfandel organic wine, you know, it is, and a natural wine, you know, it is light on its feet. It's certainly not heavy in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing terribly extracted about it. So and this is a comedy. It is a dramedy for the most part. So there's nothing too terribly super serious or heavy or violent or any of that stuff that can sometimes come in fictional storytelling. So it already matched that. I knew it would match it in that way. And when it just gets me, I'm sorry, there's so much about the flavor and the smell that I'm just like, God, I feel like after sex. Like, you know, when all that's like it's still in your nose, it's still in there, and you're just like, yep.
It's a very
specific
experience. Yeah, it's true.
Sensory, total.
Yes. So
all right.
Wine Fellas, White Zinfandel. It's called Wine Fellas Neon Dreams, White Zinfandel. That is my pairing with this comic. Dallas, what you got for us?
I'll say, I think that's a wonderful pairing. If you had, I'm glad that you didn't let me know ahead of time what you're pairing with, because you've been like, hey, we're going to pair this with a White Zinfandel. I've been like, hey, suddenly I have something more important to do.
More to do, I know.
Yeah, no, I see that, Dave. I get it, because you're right. You're pairing it with that very specific experience of after sex, which is not, you know, prime sex. It's a you know, the sense of notes are settling in ways that aren't aided by adrenaline and endorphins, and so it just becomes a solitary sort of
or pheromones. The pheromones are missing from this one.
That's true. Yeah. All right. I'll allow it. Okay. So my pairings are not my sort of rubric for pairing isn't tonight, at least, isn't dissimilar from Dave's. Dissimilar to Dave's. I love this idea of this world being grounded. So I knew I wanted something that was earthy in a very distinct way. I knew I wanted something that was also sort of hedonistic. And, you know, generally when you start talking about that class of hedonistic wines, my brain immediately goes to the Spanish reds, you know, maybe the Argentinian, the Malbecs, maybe some of the Italians. And I did land on an Italian class because I think what you've done is a very good job of integrating two fairly disparate things, which is a very metered and, for lack of a better term, PC approach to almost pornographic or pornographic adjacent material, and I use that term loosely as well. So
erotica, yeah.
It's erotica, yeah, and you've kind of integrated those seamlessly, honestly, and you've got great accents all throughout, at least for the 6 or 7 pages that we were able to kind of read. And as Dave was saying earlier, I think it's more than enough to get a good taste of where this is going and what this world is. So in terms of the pairings, I wanted something I knew was going to be deep, dark black, but sort of effervescent. Wild berries. I knew I wanted something that was also sort of notes that were sort of seductive. And in this particular class of reds, you often get a little cocoa or cacao, you get a little coffee, you get a little tobacco, you get the berries. So I went with a fairly recent favorite of mine. It's made from an organic grape, of course. It is the Torre Zambra Montepulciano Abruzzo, Abruzzo. Yeah, it is kind of fantastic because it opens up on the palate. It is sensual. The tannins are sort of mid-level tannins. I think it complements this world so very fucking much. I didn't state this, but generally I choose either the wine I want to drink as a character in the world of the story, And that character does nothing. He does not lift a hand to help. He's not going to get extra lube. He's not saving an old lady getting in an accident. He's just leaning against whatever wall, drinking whatever wine he happens to have in his glass. That's the character I embody when I envision myself in these worlds, or the vintage I would enjoy just sitting on the couch. And for this one, it was sitting on the couch because it complements this world so well. It's also bright, and like I said, the acidity is very well integrated. The tannins are very polished. It's just a very pleasant wine. It's also very sexy and seductive. And that's my guy for this one.
I fucking love that. Montepulciano, one of my favorite go-to table wines.
Yeah.
So yeah, I 100% see it.
Yeah, it's a sexy little thing for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Do you mind? I won't go super deep into everything, especially because I don't have them here to taste and really describe. Do you mind if I give you my pairings for it?
Please.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and this is the sort of, this is top shelf wine, just because the restaurants that I worked in were pretty wine heavy, and maybe it reflects a little bit my ego as a writer that I think this highly of my own.
Naturally.
To me, this comic is a combination of hanging out with your friends on a Sunday, having brunch, just the world doesn't matter, time doesn't matter. You're sitting there for 5 hours, and then going home and having the most romantic evening of your life. And really grounding yourself in that. So it's a white wine transitioning to a red wine. We start with Donhoff Riesling, really beautiful, slightly sweet but not overbearing Riesling with a nice little funk to it that
crisp, a little funky,
crisp, exactly. Leading into a Machete Napa Valley Petite Syrah, something grounded, something heavy tannin, full-bodied. That is gonna remind you why you like being in your own body. That's my that's what I think of. This
that's a good.
I will say Petite Syrah is my favorite varietal of all time, and it is. I have to work at not pairing fucking everything with Petite Syrah.
Actually, the second choice tonight,
I just want to.
My second choice tonight was a Petite Syrah.
Petite Syrah, great. See, you can do it more. I've only done it, I think, twice in the entire year.
I've done it once
of the show.
Yeah,
and I'm always like, every time I'm like, maybe a Petite Syrah. I'm like, no. You can't keep going back. There's a world of wine, David.
To be fair, Dave, you have on at least 30% of the shows had second and third choices available, which you've shown.
Petite Syrah.
And about 30% of those were Petite Syrahs.
It's a great
I'm always good at mixing it up.
Yes.
Introducing other wines as well.
Yes.
Which is always
that is true.
So, we also ask our guests to shout out another comic that they love, or either are currently loving or have loved for a long time, and pair it with a beverage of their choice. So what you got for us tonight?
Absolutely. So this works out really well because it's both a comic that I absolutely love and have loved for a while, and also a comic that is currently relevant. So it's up on Kickstarter right now for a reprint, for a re-release, with some updates to the art and a new sexy hardcover to go with it. But my choice is Plume by Kaylin Smith.
Oh yeah.
Just Kaylin Smith, in my opinion, put aside the fact that she's a phenomenal human being and one of my favorite collaborators and one of the most professional people I've gotten to work with. One of the most talented and unique visual storytellers I've ever had the pleasure of getting to read and experience. I think this book is phenomenal. I think it should be studied. I think it really does so much with the medium. It really deserves to be experienced. And again, if you're watching this, you can back Plume right now on Kickstarter. Yes. You can get the updated art, the full omnibus with, I think there's a new story, new short story that she's included with it. Highly recommend. Now, for a pairing, I thought about doing a wine, but I couldn't settle on anything, and that's because I realized this is a Western. All right, we're not, wine was certainly
You're not in
present,
wine territory or time. Yeah,
exactly. It's just not the right place or time for it. So the only thing I could really pair with it was what I was drinking earlier, which I'm currently completely out of, but which is a traditional bourbon whiskey Manhattan, or rye whiskey Manhattan.
Rye whiskey,
which is strong. It's got that strong alcoholic base to it. You generally want to pair it with 100 proof rye, which is a little bit spicy and definitely full bodied. It's got a little bit of sweetness to it. It's complex, but most importantly, it is deeply satisfying, and that is everything that Plume is. Just down to its core. So I couldn't think of a better drink to be able to pair with it.
Perfect. I would say if you were going to stretch it to wine, maybe these days you do a lot of bourbon, wine aged in bourbon barrels, which could give it some of that spice, give it some of those flavors and whatnot. Personally, though, I'm not a fan, so I like your version better. I would just do a Manhattan instead of that.
I think,
and I will say,
my bourbon barrels probably works a little bit better most of the time.
Would work even better. Yeah, 100%. And
although I could see you stretching to something like a sassafras wine. I've had a sassafras wine before,
that could be interesting.
Which is interesting. It was very interesting.
Yeah, interesting is the right word. I'm not sold on it being beyond that, but I would have
good, maybe not.
It doesn't need to be perfect.
I do like the flavors of sassafras, so
besides, it's a very long product. You can curate.
I will say that I had Plume. There you go. I will say Plume, I had it for years on my Amazon wish list. That omnibus exactly used to be in print many years ago. And I don't know where it came from. I don't know if she just printed it herself or what it was, but I had stumbled upon it on Amazon utterly randomly. Loved the look of it. I think I even had it on like Christmas lists for like 2 years in a row, and no one got it for me because it was like a $50 omnibus or something like that. And everyone was like, and I think it was all like used copies. It was hard to get. So everyone was like, nah. And I missed my opportunity, and it was just like out of print and like impossible to find. So I am thrilled this is on Kickstarter. I noticed when it hit Kickstarter because I was like, motherfucker, that book I have wanted for years. So I'm glad to hear you say it's that good.
It's brilliant, and I highly recommend. It's right up there with like seconds for me as far as like top tier graphic novels that are just evergreen. I can pick up and read them every time. I got it at C2E2 and from her directly and had her sign it. And that was when I got the omnibus. The first time I encountered Plume was actually at Planet Comic-Con. She was there. And I picked up the first issue from her and read it in the car during part of the way home. And I realized, I need to read the rest of this. This is great. Ironically, the main character's name is Vesper Gray. So I thought for a second about let's do a Vesper, but I think Manhattan works better.
I like it.
Beautiful. All right, guys. That is Plume, the omnibus, currently on Kickstarter. Right. Just do a search for Plume. It'll come right up. And this is Wells Thompson and SMUT, issue number 1. Just Google SMUT. It'll be the first thing that comes up. It is, for the sample pages that we have read, it's great. It's well written. You're going to get some sexiness out of it. Great characters. 3 issues. I would get in on this. I mean, I'm going to get on this. I have not pledged to it yet, but I'm going to as soon as this live stream is done. And yeah, I would see if you can find this wonderful Wine Fellas White Zinfandel that tastes and smells like sex, or any Montepulciano di Abruzzo probably will do the deed as well. A Manhattan might be. I mean, that's or I'm sorry, a Riesling off dry might do the deed as well. Or
Machete. Get Machete. Get that Petite Sirah.
If you have Machete, but you know,
it's a hard one to get.
Go with what you can do. Exactly. Go with what you can do. All right, guys, this has been a Wine and Comics Pairing show. Thank you so much for watching. We will check you next time. We will be back next week with a couple more shows. And until then, take care. Signing off for now.
Have a good night, people.
Adieu. Drink something nice. Drink something nice, everybody.